what's historically your relationship with sort of health and exercise been? What was it, when you were a kid, when you were in high school and college?
Hmm. Yeah. My relationship. That's like I think like thinking about it, like the different eras, right, of your life, and it's really weird too. For whatever reason, I was just like thinking about like how quickly time goes, and I'm 38, but like thinking back, like when I was 18, and I was like, I feel like it shouldn't be that long ago, but it's a little bit longer than I had thought about. So I think when I was a kid, um, I think I shared before that my dad came from extreme poverty. Um, my mom didn't come from extreme poverty, but her dad was like a lifelong 30 years in the Navy. Um, and I think like they had like a loose connection to like health and stuff, and I was mostly informed by that. Um, like when I was younger, I was in like every sport, just I was.
Mhm.
And like I'd say mostly like that continued. I want to say like in high school in the very beginning, I was very much into sports, and then I suffered a few like pretty large injuries. So athletic career took uh, a back seat, and but I was still generally curious. And then I'd say also along this way, I do remember my dad specifically when he was like, I want to say like in his 40, like late 30s, early 40s. I was pretty young, but I remember him getting into the Atkins diet.
Mhm.
And ironically, like went
Mhm.
very low carb. So funny given like what we're
Yeah.
working on. But and he got like really, he was never like I'd say out of shape, but he got very, very fit. He was just really into working out too. Like I remember before he would go to work up at like 5, 6 a.m., hit the gym, do that stuff. And then I think probably one of the events that mostly shaped my relationship with health and wellness now is my dad dying quite suddenly when he was 48. I was 19. See, 19. Sorry, I can't even count. Um,
So you're a
and
freshman in college, just moved
no,
away.
I actually just started my sophomore year of college, actually.
Okay.
So, but yeah, basically, um, and from there, I'll say the challenges from that event and from the tangential ones that happened within our family. Um, I I'd say like in general within life and with my health, I was mostly on autopilot for a
Mhm.
bit, or like self-preservation and avoidance of things. My dad did have a genetic issue. He had familial hypercholesterolemia, and
And he
his
knew about that, right? Before he died. Was he doing anything to manage it?
yeah, that's a good question. So when he was very young, never was medicated. He didn't get medicated until him and my mom met and got married.
Mhm.
So he was like operating in like his teens and his early 20s with no intervention or no intervention or management of any kind. Um, and as far as once he met my mom, he had, saw a doctor regularly, and even leading up to his death, like he was on a statin, um, and for his quote unquote like history leading up to his death, his cholesterol was low. His
Mhm.
lipids were low. However, he died with 95% blockage in all of his arteries. He had a
Mhm.
widowmaker, um, and uh,
And
like I
back
don't.
then there wasn't. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just thinking because I think this relates to your story, right? Where we're going to get to of you getting a CAC,
Hmm?
but back then, this would have been sort of early 2000s ish. It wasn't as that those tests are not very accessible now. They were really not accessible then. So I'm guessing he um, really had no way of knowing that that was coming. I mean, had he had any kind of warning from doctors? It sounds like he was doing the things that you would expect a guy at that age who had traditionally high cholesterol. It's an age where you'd start to go, all right, let's get it in shape. Let's get on the statin. Let's do the working out. Hey, good for you. Your numbers have come down. Just keep up the good work. That was probably the kind of messaging he was getting from doctors, or did he have any more of a warning coming, any history of early heart stuff in the family?
Well, okay, well, that's a good question. So I'll take that in two pieces. So did he have any warnings? So like my dad died with an 8-pack. So like I think a lot of things, it's like what you look like is somehow indicative of what's happening internally. I think we're all a lot smarter now. I know that that's just not the case. And as far as like things leading up to it, and I remember like after he died, my mom said, like, look, if he thought something was wrong, he would have,
Mhm.
gone to the hospital. I think she may have said like he had thought something was weird one time. I don't know if it was his heart, maybe it was something else. And they ended up going to the ER when I was in college, like not
Mhm.
related. He
Right.
definitely wasn't going to the doctor like all the time, but he wasn't dumb enough. Like he loved his life and he loved his family,
Right.
and he was not that naive or I should say like ignorant there. Um, so and as far as like his lifestyle beyond just like the exercising and eating relatively clean, but I think the other thing to call out there is like it was probably a high, not probably, was a higher fat diet. But as I said, his cholesterol was actually low, but also he never smoked a day in his life, never really drank. Like having alcohol in our home was not really like a thing. Like I never saw him drink a beer or whatever. Not that
Mhm.
it was bad, but it just wasn't his thing. And as far as was there anything else? So we found out later, or mom found out after the fact, that there is a history in his side of the family of young cardiac events like this. His
Mhm.
cousin and someone else, and also his parents, both had high lipids. And one of the things that the doctor said to my mom was, he got it from both sides, and I'm pretty sure he was like homozygous for familial hypercholesterolemia. You can be heterozygous or homozygous. Homozygous is the worst, and it's really, 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 really rare. Um, and the doctor also conveyed is like what happens in your 20s and like your 30s really can load this quote unquote gun.
Mhm.
And as far as the imaging, like I remember because as you can imagine, different milestones, and as you age and you think, or at least for me, I think about these things and you continue to face your mortality in different ways. And I'm not afraid to say that I'm, I guess you could say, fearful, right?
Mhm.
It's okay to be fearful because, without fear, there's no courage. Um, and I'd ask people in particular, like I asked Casey, and I have had a lot of conversations in the past about this, and she's like, telling you, happened to your dad does not have to happen to you. We're in a different world.
Mhm.
Imaging being one of them, right? Like, and there was some. I do remember because my dad had two brothers, and he was the oldest. And I remember they got some testing done. I'm not sure exactly what it was after. Uh, and one of them had to have some kind of procedure or get on some medication of some sort. But there was an incomplete picture, two things, like incomplete picture of the phenotype, I guess you'd call it, like
Mhm.
family history situation, and then also to your point about accessibility as well.
Right. Yeah. How soon after that, after your dad died, did you examine your own, whether or not you have familial hypercholesterol? Did you get cholesterol labs. Like, I don't remember understanding anything about my blood markers until maybe my mid to late 20s. Like I just remember going through college. Like I remember getting a physical when I first got health insurance when I was maybe 23, 24, working a real job and going for a physical and realizing, oh, like this is the first time I've had a physical since, I don't know, maybe freshman year. You had to have one coming into college or something. But how aware were you at that point of A, your genetic situation, and B, what your blood markers look like?
Yeah, so very minimal, right? Like I think there's also like, about one of the things that we're building is like here and in like this movement in the world of like being kind of like the CEO of your own health, or maybe for like a younger age, like you can control this. You are in control. You can do things. Like this is not um some predetermined thing that has to be the way it is. So I'll say I think a couple things further about like my individual circumstance. Right after that, I was like between my dad dying and then the subsequent events within my family, I was, as you could kind of say, in shock. Or I don't know if that's the right word that I'm using. I remember like I went with my sister like to the doctor. And I think I had like a basic cholesterol panel. I don't really remember what they were. And I was told that like you don't have what your dad had, or someone said that to my mom. And I think that's something that I always listen to because it's like a doctor or some, maybe it wasn't even a doctor, maybe it was like somebody like in the medical office. And also what I forgot to mention was my one of my dad's brothers has two sons. One was my exact age, and I can't remember. I'll refer to it as FH, just for if he had FH, maybe heterozygous or something. But he was medicated at a young age for this, and I never was. So then like transition to post my dad dying, maybe going to that doctor once. I don't even know if it was a doctor. I just got like labs. It's not like a memorable experience for lack of a better word. So from there, um, I was like on autopilot. I finished kind of like going through the motions, finished college. And as far as like, I'd say my, what we would call health and wellness right now, I think emotionally it was broken and it was like outside of my mind. And um I'd say like you could say into my mid 20s, like I'd say around mid 20s, maybe mid late 20s, I was maybe like on the bottom. And I wasn't until um like I just like kind of vividly remember one morning getting up, and one of the things my dad told me when I was younger is can't control everything. Um, but at the end of each day, or when you wake up in the morning, if you can look yourself in the mirror and you can be okay with what you're looking at, not necessarily physically, but just like what you are as a person, and that's all that matters. Remember, just like this was not just physically, it's emotionally everything, and just saying that your dad would be disappointed. And it wasn't like an up and to the right thing, but I do know from that day as a person, um, health, wellness, internally, externally, that was the tipping point. It was a tipping point for me. And then brick by brick over the last, I don't know, 10 to 15 years, uh, been changing and has led me to where I am today.
Would that Mike, so Mike at 26, 27, look like you? Or did you have like a belly and muscles half the size you have now? And
Um, I wouldn't say wouldn't look like me now. I mean, I'm pretty fit. Um, uh, I'd say like would be and I do want to emphasize on so there's the physical side as well, right? This physical side we're talking about, and then there's the mental part of
Mhm.
this, and accountability and responsibility. Um, I definitely look different. Was not who I am today.
Yeah.
I think the things that I am the proudest of are the 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 way I operate, the person, the mentality, and obviously the things that we're talking about right now, or we're going to
Mhm.
talk about, I should say. But yes, I
Yeah.
was different. It was like, I think it was just like a years of just, I wish that I had a better word than autopilot. I think
Yeah.
avoidance is in there.
Mhm.
I think, um,
Sounds like maybe a little bit of dissociation of just kind of, yeah, stepping, like not being engaged.
and yeah, yeah. I mean, like not being engaged. Yeah, there's like a probably another onion to peel there, but I think that's probably suffices.
And I mean, this sort of relates to, I think, one of the next health milestones for you, and in a way, was joining Josh at Levels. But my understanding of your history was this is also a time when you were not terribly happy professionally. So you were also at maybe that point that a lot of folks are, that kind of quarter life crisis where you got out of school, you went to do a job, you do it for a couple of years, and you go, wait, is this what I'm doing? This is the next
Yeah.
50 years?
Yeah, I mean that was definitely um is it I'm just trying to put all the numbers together. But yes, at that time I was quite unhappy with my job. I was in finance and banking and thought I had to do that thing. And I think for uh, a lot of people, given how much of our time we spend working when you are I mean, they feed each other, right? If you're unhappy with
Yeah.
yourself or where you are, you're going to be unhappy in work and vice versa. And I was like on both sides of it. And then I think, when I was in 26, 27, I was able to start turning myself, the person, around. And I was just like, and then going down like this rabbit hole of self improvement. And, um, it would be from that time a few more years before levels officially is a thing. But along that way, Josh have a little bit of a longer history than levels. We had many a conversations about like I remember Josh introduced me to Peter Diaz the Drive podcast when it first came out. I
Mhm.
think it was like 2018, maybe 2019, can't remember. 2018, whatever. The first episode I listened to was about LP little a, something that I
Mhm.
have high. And yeah, it was levels was the thing that I was um already excited about, and not just the thing, but like the area that I was already going
Mhm.
down.
Yeah. So it was a chance to, I mean, you said before, like kind of a chance to align your life with your profession a little bit more, your kind of values or the things that were important to you that you wanted to be thinking about and working on anyway. Now you got to do it professionally.
100%. I said that in the email to investors, like
Mhm.
something like it was like almost verbatim to that. It was I was going down this rapid self improvement, and in my mid to late 20s is when I really, you know, really took stick of my in like got less afraid, I'd say, of facing my mortality and taking it seriously and going down the rabbit hole to make sure that I do not suffer the same fate as my father and my other ancestors.
Yeah. So I mean, we're kind of working toward this most recent milestone,
Hmm.
which was your CAC test, and then some of the behavior change that comes after that. But I am curious about, within the time you've been at Levels, so that's what, 6+ years. I guess we've been around 7. I don't know, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
I've been here 5-ish. What what's been the evolution of that health, right? By the time you join Josh at Levels, you're in a mode of self-improvement. You are starting to take care of yourself. What have you learned or done differently over the time that you've been here?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So like I think on this self-improvement and being this like the actual CEO of my life, being not a passenger but a driver in all things. I've always like it's this constant desire to improve, get better, and learn how I can get better. Not in like I think this can be like a negative thing for folks, but it's just like it wasn't always this way.
Mm.
And I know that nothing is promised tomorrow. So I want to make sure I squeeze the orange fully. And I mentioned I'll close this loop because like I was just always looking for new information and information that I can trust to get better. And this isn't always the best source, but like this is around the time when YouTube was blowing up and you can learn about anything that you want. It's not always the right stuff, and you gotta check to make sure. And one of the places that I'd say is, or at least for me, was like the hardest to navigate was when it comes to information about like true health and like longevity and wellness and nutrition, right? Like we used to say this to our members all the time, you know, one of the reasons people come to us because their one friend said they should be keto, the other one said they need to be paleo and vegan, and it's like what I wanted was a source of truth. And coming into CGM experience, like before Levels was Levels, I had assumed that like certain I'm not going to demonize any food. I think any actual food that has not been how should I say this, ruined by man. I think all foods have a utility and a quality. But what I think I've just learned is like for me, it was helpful to get that feedback from my body, especially using CGM. And then, being able to more precisely understand what's actually happening and even have a record of what's happening so that I can modulate and make better decisions, as opposed to like reading something on the internet, throwing spaghetti against the wall and not really understanding or having anything to refer back to. And over the years, I've changed so many different things, and in different seasons, different life, different goals, I could always navigate for myself, because that's the end of the day. This is my life, and I'm ultimately accountable and responsible for the daily decisions and actions that make me who I am. So
CGM was a big unlock for you. And I remember in the early days, like one of the things I would hear about you is like Mike has the longest streak of like 100 days or stable 100 score, meaning very stable glucose all day or whatever. And that stable glucose was a bit of an unlock for you, right? That realizing when you talk about some of that feedback, that like learning to avoid spikes and things was useful and something that you learned how to kind of incorporate. And I feel like it took a lot of the kinds of things we write about of just like, don't eat processed food, try to avoid the refined sugars, the refined carbs, that kind of stuff. What was you can speak more to that, but I'm also curious as an analog, because it kind of moves us along the path. What was your relationship with blood labs? Were you getting labs at Levels? Were you watching other markers besides glucose over the last 5 years?
So I should comment on that too. Like, with me, as I said, the improvement thing, and like, I want to make sure that everything's in my control. I give it the best effort that I can and leave it all out on the field, to use a sports metaphor. That goes back into like my dad telling me when I was young that I think stays with me now far more than it ever did when he was alive, of being able to look myself in the mirror and have like an honest conversation. So as far as that doesn't always mean that stable glucose is a good thing. I don't know if it's in scope for this conversation. You could drink like a gallon of canola oil or olive oil. That's probably not good. But as far as I will say too, like that tool of CGM plus having like the contextual layer of what you're eating and your activity and your sleep, I think that especially for people that can be curious, allows you to experiment and like build your lifestyle for you. Now there's blind spots in just CGM, as we know, and just glucose. So what was my relationship with labs? So this started by me, I'll go back to like my mid to early 20s. I was fearful to go get a panel done from my family history and just from like just not caring about, I just thought like, the aesthetics, and you go lift or whatever, that's fine. But I knew deep down inside that was not true. I had the perfect data of my dad dying with an 8-pack to know that. So I did start to get more labs. And even before we started offering, this is a service at Levels in 2021. I had like an NMR panel done. I tried to get, I could have gotten more, but also another thing that I feel very fortunate about being part of Levels, I got exposed to more of it even when we were building early, right? I got exposed to products. Josh and I had regular chats. I had chats with Casey. I'd go get a panel done. And then, of course, the highlight for me was when we started blood work in 2021. And so, yeah, was I getting them as regularly as I was now? No, but I did know, like for me, glucose, while metabolic health and cardiovascular health are definitely related, it was very apparent that metabolic health was not something that I needed to really focus on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, decent glucose, decent insulin. Those were not your problems. You weren't high diabetes risk, but your cholesterol numbers were up there, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, so yeah, just to put a finer point on that, my lipids were high, like very high, like in the 90th, 95th percentile. And, I don't know. I say like this journey has not been an up and to the right thing. And I think I was very much avoiding what was staring at me right in the face of you need to go deeper on this. And then I didn't. And I'm not saying I had them all the time, every time, but there was a stretch I was doing it like quarterly. And then more recently last year, I had them done a couple times. And I remember, I was with Josh this past summer. And he's like, dude, it's time. You need to get a CAC. Like, you just need to do it. It's such a simple thing you can get access to. And this one's like kind of tough to say because I don't like to break promises. And I had promised my now wife that I would have gotten more imaging done before we got married, and I did not do that.
Right.
I could say that life was busy. I could say all those things, but I'm going to be very accountable. And I know in the back of my mind, I just
Didn't want to see it.
Didn't want to see it. I will be more candid. Like, I believe I convinced myself that the reason was, I'm under 40. It's definitely going to say 0. Like the CAC is going to say 0. I know it. So then what I really need to do is go get a CT angiogram more clearly, with contrast dye, so that it uses AI to see inside your arteries, and it distinguishes hard plaque from soft plaque. So like the soft plaque is the one that typically for younger men and likely what killed my dad, those ruptures. So that's what I convinced myself with. And I'm happy to go into the results of my CAC. If it's
I definitely want to get there, but I am curious about just one other question of that time.
Mhm.
So you're getting labs, you've got high cholesterol, you
Mhm.
are at this point deep into understanding physiology, deep into health improvement. What story are you telling yourself when you get labs back and that cholesterol is high? Like, or what is the discussion? Like, why 3 years ago did you not start getting maniacal about saturated fat, or go on a statin, or go get a CAC? Like, why did it take until Josh finally going? And again, I imagine the pressure of getting married and starting to be able to see the future and see family and stuff. But like, what was the story you told yourself when you looked at those high cholesterol labs, say 3 years ago?
Yeah, I'd say the first story is I convinced myself of a I think an incorrect story that my mother was told that I don't have what my mom had, and I'm okay. And
Mhm.
my other markers are awesome,
Mhm.
and um, I'll be fine. And I'd
Right.
say that and I was able to compartmentalize that and just say everything's gonna be fine. You're gonna figure it out. And I think with like most things for me, in the challenges that I've had in my life when I was really young, and then with my dad dying, and even to this day, I've always been able to figure it out. And like
Mhm.
nothing has broken me. Or maybe, I mean, I've been broken before, but I've never been completely broken and given up
Mhm.
and not been able to get out of myself of bad places or bad things in my life. And there's this heavy self-reliance, heavy because I've had to. And then I think there's like the avoidance thing.
Mhm.
We will figure it out. We'll get it figured out. Blah blah blah. We'll get it figured out. And then certain milestones in life, like the stakes change.
Mhm.
And during this time, from like my late 20s up until my my mid 20s to early 30s, I was mostly a bachelor. Um, I should say no serious, like
Mhm.
significant other. And then, I met my now wife, and she's a bit younger. She's a little bit younger than me. And there's been like these inklings of things of like realizing it's not just you anymore. It's not just you. And um, I think the thing about getting married, it's like, oh man, it's like this awesome thing. And then you also realize as you get a bit older how much quicker time goes. And I had realized also, I'm not really telling you the story that I told myself, I'm trying to paint a picture.
Mhm.
But I also realized that like my actions weren't mapping my words completely. And even like to go back to my bio, I said that I'm doing everything in my capabilities to make sure that I don't suffer the same fate as my dad and my other ancestors. And that was false. That was
Right.
false. We know that. Um, and there is a deep fear of not doing those things and allowing what happened to me at a younger age to happen to my wife and to hopefully
Mhm.
my future family. Um, so I don't know if I answered the question properly.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of sets up the stakes for what happens when you finally go get the CAC. So tell me about getting your score
Mhm.
back.
Yeah, so I was really like excited to go and like, get this CAC, and I think I was like a little bit nervous, but like even the guy at the at the imaging place, like, yeah, your heart rate's really low. um, and yeah, I was just excited to get the information. And then I got the
Pretty
information.
convinced that you were going to get a 0, right? You were excited
Oh,
because you were pretty confident your score was going to be good.
I was excited because I knew I was going to get a 0, but I also knew that I was very candid with, I thought I was being honest. I was being honest with myself. I said, you're going to get a 0. And then, you know what? We need to immediately go get this clearly scanned, because
Mhm.
you're taking this first step, but you really need to get to the source of truth, and we really need to figure this out. So I got the results, and for a man under 40, you should absolutely have a 0. Like, you should. And then I found out that my score came back at a 70, and I went down like a deep rabbit hole, and given my family history, given all these variables and that score, it's like, hey, you have disease, like you have early stage cardiovascular coronary artery disease. Like and I to put a little bit of more, like, bring me back to things that happened in my life, where I have calcified plaque, and one of the arteries that I do is the one that's responsible for the Widowmaker, the thing
Mhm.
that killed my dad. So I was just like, I remember it was a Friday. It was a Friday in August, because I remember it was right before the Friday Forum.
Mhm.
And I was just like, I was so shook. And I remember I talked to Josh about it briefly, but like I wasn't even in the talking about it. Like,
Mhm.
I think he could tell. And I was
Were
just like,
you scared or just shocked? Like, was fear the kind of initial emotion?
I should describe it. There was definitely like shock, fear, um, quickly shame,
Mhm.
um, and disappointment of, like, things are like, when you give the context of the whole picture, they're like, with my history and stuff, like, it's not, it's like, damn, it is not great. And I was
Mhm.
mostly, I think the thing that hit me the hardest was, of course, myself, but really my wife. And I
Mhm.
remember, like, going home, and she's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, because I was not going to tell her, like, that night. I wanted to just, like, have a night, like,
Mhm.
not ruin the night. Well, there's something wrong. Like, I guess it was just written all over my face.
Because that's the thing you learn early in marriage, that like that's usually not an option. Because like you don't get a night. She knows.
So I was like, okay. I was like, I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong. She's like, Mike, don't lie to me, okay? And I was like, all right. So I was like, and it was just hard to even say the words.
Mhm.
And I immediately said after, I was like, I want you to know that, look, I'm already in Mike mode on this, and I promise you, like, you are my why. Our family is my why, and I will not allow this to continue or to beat me. I'm gonna beat it with everything that I have in my body. So
So you would already by the evening of learning this, midday, turned those initial emotions into that LFG.
I mean, like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't. Like, clearly, it wasn't my full energy, because it was enough for my wife to know that there was something wrong with me. But I I was feeling those feelings. But I also was like, I'd already done enough research and talked to enough people to be like, and learn that the main thing that we need to do is flatten the curve. Like I was already checking out models and trying to figure out resources, whether it's ChatGPT or anything else, to help me like model out my dad's trajectory versus
Mhm.
mine right now, and like what I could do. And I think maybe not that day, but well, actually, definitely that day. But I think feeling blessed and fortunate that I had this information and a deep sense of responsibility for those like my dad that did not have this information and could have changed their fate, that I had that opportunity. So I did, it was a really challenging, I'd say, initial few days and weeks, just like mentally, like just trying to not let this, like, I don't know, ruin's probably like too strong of a word, but overpower everything.
Mhm.
Um, and realizing that like I have this opportunity to like, while I can't reverse the plaque that is calcified in me, I do, like, given modern medicine, which I will most likely need to use, and the lifestyle levers that we can pull on, I have, it is very much, I'll have to be very diligent and disciplined, but like I can stop this for lack of better words. And that's just
Yeah.
that's just like who I am at this point. Sometimes this is why I'm so intense about all things.
So what was the interventions when you decide, okay, we got to flatten the curve, we got to stop the damage? Uh, you didn't go straight to downing a bottle of statins. What did you do? What changes did you make?
So a couple of things, and like for whatever reason, the other thing is like I never wanted to for some reason, like I didn't want to go on medication. I just didn't want to do it. I don't know like really why. Like, but I didn't want to have to do that. Now, I knew immediately. I did not have a cardiologist. I honestly, this might sound so silly, don't really have a real doctor. Um, and I was like, okay, we tried it the Mike way. We tried it the Mike way of not having a cardiologist or seeing somebody. So we're going to search and find one. But it is quite important to me that that person is like really well informed and not stuck in like the 1990s, for lack of better words,
Yeah.
on this information. So that took some time. I found like a specialist for familial hypercholesterolemia. I got a genetic test done. Um, that the genetic test, you know, revealed I don't have the major, what is it, monogenic, like large mutation for familial hypercholesterolemia. What is likely is I have polygenic, like smaller, multiple
Mhm.
mutations to multiple genes. Um, so all that to say, I've not started a statin or any pharmaceutical, not because I'm avoiding them completely. It's just I want to speak with, I want to have somebody that I can trust and rely on. And I also
Mhm.
wanted to see like what's possible with lifestyle. Uh,
Mhm.
like what's my new, or where's my baseline going to be at? So the major levers that I pulled on, so if I'm stripping out mostly saturated fat from my diet, um, I, again, like I'm not demonizing any one food or anything. I think for somebody that can tolerate it and can process it well, there's probably a place for saturated fat, but it is very apparent that for me, like less is better. So I put like a new target, shamelessly I plugged levels. Like the Heart Health program was really helpful to me. I was able to, like, I targeted 20 grams or less per day, which
Mhm.
for anybody that has never ever looked at labels for saturated fat, like it's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, that's hard. 20 is an ambitious target. Like you can't accidentally get to 20. I mean, I guess if there's
No.
probably certain eating styles that might get you there, but certainly if you're not vegan, if you're somebody who does consume a lot of protein in particular,
Yep.
you are probably well above 20. Like
And that's
3x, 4x above that.
I mean, and that's the other thing is like, I'm definitely like for my diet has always mostly been my plate protein and fiber, and then we'll fill out the rest with some fats, some carbohydrate, and I live a really active lifestyle, so I tend to eat a lot of food, and portions are not anything that apparently I was familiar with. So my level was probably like orders of magnitude even higher. So I had this genetic issue, right? And then you're also adding in likely a lot of this thing that we know the literature shows saturated fat will increase your lipids. So targeting that aggressively. And the other thing, while I always wanted to have a fiber-rich diet, I set like a target of like 40 to 50 grams per day, and included in that would be psyllium husk, like about 3 tablespoons per day. So they're like the main things, and it's like I will say, like at first I was like, no limited saturated fat really means like very limited to if any red meat.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed red meat, and I was just like concerned, like, oh man, I was like a little bit of a doom and gloom. Is like the diet gonna really suffer? Am I gonna hate it? I have to be honest, I'm like 6 or I guess now like 8 weeks in, maybe a little bit more, still eating really lots of delicious food, like lots of delicious food. And I'm lucky that my wife is supportive and comes along on these escapades with me. So yeah, they're the two levers.
So a lot of chicken and turkey. What'd you do about the thing that really got me when I started trying to cut saturated fat? I went through all the meats and was like, okay, I can swap out this kind of beef for this, or this kind of pork, or go to chicken, turkey, or fish. But it was all the other like eggs, right, which were a big part of my diet. Chocolate has saturated fat. The protein bars I was eating were like no sugar, but loaded with saturated fat. Were there other things like that you had to cut out besides red meat, or any other significant components of your diet?
I think that's a good question. So, well, one thing I really loved was butter. So that's really like, there's no way to get around that. Like, you're either gonna have a day where you just, hey, this is that day, and I'm gonna have that. But as far as like the day to day, there was a point in time where I was eating more eggs like every day. Although, like I'd say like the last year or so during the weekday, I just don't have time to make eggs. So, but every weekend, I really do, like my wife and I, it's our time to, even if I'm working, for me to like be a little bit slower. So we have like breakfast is our thing. Like we typically Saturday and Sunday do a nice big breakfast. I'd say the thing that I did do is, instead of being a crazy person, I don't mean that derogatory, and eating like 4 or 5 whole eggs, I would do like 2 whole eggs, 3 to 4 egg whites.
Right.
And the chocolate, and that's the thing that was very surprising, is just how high chocolate can be in saturated fat. I really do love chocolate, but it's not like a huge craving that I have all the time. There was something I was gonna say, but I noticed like certain like brands or like qualities of food can definitely change the amount of, and like I'm not saying by a wide margin, but when you're targeting 20 grams, a half or 1 gram difference, like 1 gram difference, I'd say half gram is like on the margins, but like 1 gram difference, especially if you're going to have multiple servings, definitely changes things. I think a good example of this too is like peanut butter. I don't eat a lot of peanut butter I mean, peanut butter is like one of my favorite things on the planet for different reasons. But like in a portion controlled world, I can still have peanut butter sometimes. And especially now as I'm trying to find more calories, it's actually helpful. So it's almost like for me now, I think a lot of things when it comes to like, unfortunately, diet and food has been ruined by a lot of people for a lot of people.
Mm,
I'd say probably by like the Western world marketing machine.
mm,
And another reason to be fortunate of levels is I've been able to go on this journey. It's like it's exciting to like try new things and find ways to make this work. And the one other thing I do want to comment on, I know we're like pressing up against time. I don't have a hard stop, but um dairy,
mm.
like I mean, I think we can all agree like whole milk is like the greatest thing ever. Not that I was drinking gallons of whole milk. But like I don't do reduced fat. Not that I was drinking like gallons, but if I have like a shake, I would do like half almond milk, half,
Mm.
reduced fat milk. I don't do that anymore, but I do find a way, like I really do love low fat cottage cheese, and I have that in my
Mm.
diet and I'm able to hit my targets. It's just um I still love like all of my meals. And it's just coming back to the why I'm doing this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's always a useful story to tell, that these changes don't have to be one of deprivation, right? And that like there are a lot of things that you think you can't live without, you can. I mean, we hear this from members all the time of like, oh, I cut out my nightly chocolate bar, and after a week I didn't really miss it anymore, and I actually feel better now that I'm not having it. And and for those things that you do really want, like you said, occasionally you're just like, I'm gonna have eggs, I'm gonna have butter. It's fine
Yeah.
because the rest of the week I've been not having it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like our bodies are just like, oh, it has to be this all the time. Like my wife and I had our first wedding anniversary not that long ago, and I was like nervous because like we wanted to go to for that kind of stuff. We would always do like a really nice steakhouse. I was a little bit nervous, and we had a
Mm.
conversation. We're like, we're gonna have it, we're gonna do it. And I
Yeah.
had my labs done that week, yeah, on my follow up labs. So yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about, before we wrap, let's talk about your follow-up lab. So you get the
Mhm.
CAC, you kind of go into beast mode, start reducing things. 6 weeks later, you get labs, and we'll publish. I think you shared some of the charts, and we're going to put these in the
Yeah.
article. But what happened to your ApoB?
Yeah, and that's the main one I'm after. I think.
Mm,
I mean, with all of your
yeah,
research,
sort of best
it
indication of harmful cholesterol is the way
yeah.
we would say that.
So I mean, I think my obviously the CAC, but I think my labs done in June or July. I think middle of June. My ApoB was 125 milligrams per deciliter, and from like 2023 through that time, it's been anywhere from like 139 at the high, and I think the low was 121. And then I had that CAC done the end of August. So, and then I had my follow up labs, or my most recent labs, I should say, done on the end of September, and my ApoB was at 89. So I think it
Um,
was like 30, or from the most recent, I think it's like a 30-ish, but like from the high, it's a 40+% reduction.
yeah, that's huge. That's a huge reduction in six. So what you found is that you are one of the people for whom saturated fat, I think it's fair to say, is a real lever. We know that for maybe a third of population, it isn't. But it seems like you have uncovered a thing that does make a big difference for you.
Yeah. I I like to think that like all the pieces matter, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, like this was the biggest lever, that and adding in the psyllium husk
Mhm.
were the biggest lifestyle changes that I made. Of course, I'm still very active, but that's the variable, or those are the variables that changed. And it was when I got those results, of like, because like Josh and I were talking. Josh like, dude, you're gonna blow it out of the water. You're gonna be at like 100. You're gonna be maybe a little bit 100, a little bit above 100. And I was like, okay, we'll see. And to see those numbers, and I mean, there was basically every one of my lipids, like drastic changes. And even my, one of the other areas that I've neglected to say is I started taking like an omega-3 supplement, like on the higher dose, because I also saw that my omegas were really, my omega-6 to omega-3, and the like the ratios and then the total omega-3s were really, really, shouldn't say bad, very much out of range. And that was probably the other thing that I added to my diet, is I tried to eat more fatty fish, like 1 to 2 times a week, and then that omega-3 supplement. And it's seeing those results in a very limited amount of time. I'm not naive, and it's not in me to be complacent. I'm just too excited to see that the daily, I know this, but like another reinforcement, the daily decisions and actions that we take actually have a meaningful improvement. And one of the problems is so many people don't have feedback loops for this information. And it's really exciting, not just the feedback loops, but even the tools of me to be able to like assess the day, assess the week, see how I'm doing against those targets. And then the main thing, like my lab markers, that's like the loop closure.
Yeah. So where do you go from here? Now you see you've got this lever, you've made these lifestyle changes. Where's the gold left to mine for you? Or is it just about sustaining the changes you've made?
No. I want to
always be improving.
Well, yes, I have always been improving. But also I want to get my APOB sub 70. Now, that is likely, or at least what I'm told, is not possible without a pharmaceutical. But I was also told that like you cannot, the one marker LP(a) is genetic and you can't really move it. And it wasn't a gigantic change, but from my other labs to the most recent, it was about 10% change that I saw. So I want to do whatever I need to do. I need to do whatever is required to get my ApoB in the sub 70 range. I have more labs scheduled for beginning or middle of November. And then I'm working on the cardiologist front I can't wait to dump all of my data that I have on them. They're really going to say what's wrong with this person. But yeah, continuing to I want to see what it looks like with, that would be like 12 weeks, 10 weeks. I don't even know. I can't do math right now. See like what does this story show then, and figuring out how do we get this like an actual plan, and figuring out how I get my labs where they need to actually be. It's nice where I'm at now, but need to continue to move forward and improve.